Hello, how are you? I was at my I was getting my hair done. So don't mind the little the color. That'll wash off when I wash my face before bed. Um but in any case, I was getting my hair done and we were talking about dreams. And it inspired me to kind of come on here and talk a little bit about dreams and what they mean in our lives and what they usually represent. Okay, so there's different types of dreams, but I'm talking about just like it's a dream, right? It's a dream, maybe a nightmare. Sometimes we have recurring ones, sometimes we have memories. This video isn't really about trauma. You know, if you have trauma, and then hopefully you're doing traumatic work or trauma work, right? Not traumatic work. Sorry, that doesn't sound right. Trauma work. But sometimes we have recurring nightmares and it's not about a particular memory, okay? It's more about how we feel. And most dreams are about how we feel. Like the emotion that the dream elicits in us or for us, okay, is typically what the dream is trying to tell us. So, you know, you'll hear people talking about different things that can create tumultuous dreams, you know, like, oh, if you eat a pastrami sandwich or something before bed. And I guess it can, you know, but typically dreams are our brain's way of processing residual emotion that we haven't maybe consciously processed before going to bed. Because if you think about it, our brain works through association. Okay, so even if you don't bump into a particular person or go to a particular place, you may during the day see something that says that name that reminds you of, or something happens that through association, maybe an emotion that we never actually worked through, a memory we never worked through, okay, may come up for us. And we don't even realize it on a conscious level because it's all happening in the brain, right? Sometimes we do, but we push it down or we put it aside, which is, you know, if you think of my last video, which is saying you got to feel, because our feelings are really our compass in life. It tells us something about what we're feeling and why, right? Sometimes it's not as nefarious as we may think, and other times it's our brain's way of warning us, right? Because the brain picks up on everything, all right? We just don't always have the cognitive ability to retrieve that. So the people that can retrieve, we say they have a photogenic memory, right? The brain remembers everything. We just don't necessarily consciously remember everything or have the neuron connections to be able to retrieve that information at will, okay? Everyone's different. Everyone's brain works differently, but we develop it, right? So in any case, I always say it's not about what we're dreaming most of the time, okay? It depends on the type of dream or whatever. It's usually about the emotion that the dream elicits for us is what we are meant to sit with and reconcile and process, or whatever the case may be. I always keep a dream journal next to my bed. Okay, I don't always use it, but if it's a relevant dream and I wake up and it's still fresh in my head, I'll write down key details and go back to sleep if it's in the middle of the night. Or when I get up in the morning, that's the first thing I do if I really feel in my gut that that's something I'm meant to process, right? Maybe it's purging up something that I thought I processed and I didn't completely. Doesn't mean I never did. It just means that it's still some residual emotion or thought processes that need to kind of be worked through, okay? This whole healing journey, and not even just healing, but growth journey. Okay, let's put it that way, because I don't want to make it sound like I think everyone's a bag of broken goods here, right? It's a growth journey. That's what I consider it for myself, is that I'm constantly growing because I'm constantly working on these things. Because there's a never-ending flow, okay? We just don't always realize because we're too busy living, okay? So dreams are actually there to benefit us. And I'm talking, again, regular dreams. You know, you'll hear people, some people may have visions or someone visits them, and everyone has different belief systems around all of that, okay? Some people will even talk about outer body experiences in the dream state or dimensional travel. I mean, it can go deep. It can go deep, okay? I'm talking specifically to just dreams, okay? That I had a wonky dream last night and I didn't have a pastrami sandwich. Okay, so what does that mean? And when we can sit with the emotion that it brings up for us, okay, which ties in my other video, which says feel it, sit with it. The dream itself isn't going to harm you. It's just there to help you file things away in an appropriate way, right? Where you can actually learn a lesson if there's a lesson there. Learn more about yourself, right? Different things in different dreams mean different things. It seemed redundant. Like water, for instance. Water is typically associated with emotion. So if you're dreaming about being immersed in water, that may say something about how much emotion you're feeling at that moment. So the dream, when you wake up just feeling really like activated in a sense, like, wow, maybe I need a little grounding. The dream is there to tell you that whether you're consciously aware of this or not, this is what your body is holding, okay? So the dream is helping you to find creative and effective ways of working with that energy, because we don't want to hold emotion in like that. We don't want to suppress it, right? If I have a dream that I'm in a tumultuous storm in the ocean, that usually I know that that's telling me, wow, I had some upsetting emotions that came up for me. Now let me process. Let me sit with that and figure out, what is it trying to tell me? What am I sitting with that I maybe was otherwise unaware of? Okay. Dreams are important, but they happen typically in our subconscious, unconscious state. Obvi, right? Because we're sleeping. Then there's some dreams that we may have that we call lucid dreaming. What is lucidity, right? Lucidity is awareness, being present. So if I'm having a dream and I'm having metacognitions that I'm having a dream, so I'm aware that I'm asleep and I'm in a fantasy world, that's lucid dreaming. I'm aware that I'm dreaming. Some people can take it to the next level and actually co-create their dream. So if I'm in a dream and I'm aware that I'm dreaming and I get the message and I can even process real time what that dream is trying to tell me, I learn the lesson, and now I want to get out of the middle of the ocean treading, I might envision a boat showing up and all of a sudden there's a boat, right? So dreams can be really cool if you have that ability, but you don't have to do to that level with a lucid dream. Just knowing that you're in a dream is lucid dreaming, okay? Which is beneficial, especially if it's tumultuous emotion and stuff like that, because you understand that you're going to wake up, right? That this isn't real. Because let's face it, we all have had dreams that felt really real, right? And some just like really fantastical. And then you try and say, oh my God, it was so cool. I had this dream. I was flying on this giant butterfly. And then you look at yourself and you're like, it was better in my head. Right? However, it helps when we talk about it or write it down so that we can process, because the emotion is there for us. It's very subjective, okay? Because not everyone would think that that's a cool dream. If you do, there's a reason you dreamt it, right? I was talking to someone who said that they, in their dream, had a hard time speaking. They couldn't speak in the dream, right? Well, that can be multiple things. Usually speech is around your throat chakra, right? That's our place where we communicate, where we set boundaries, where we express ourselves, right? So if I can't speak in a dream, first of all, what emotion is that bringing up for me, right? If I can't speak and I'm happy about that, then maybe that says something about, I don't want to speak. I don't want to share, right? In real life, but maybe we're being made to. Or if I can't speak and I'm really frustrated about that, maybe it's saying I'm feeling disempowered in a certain area of my life. It doesn't have to be a generalized thing, right? There could be areas that I've compartmentalized in my life where I feel very empowered, but maybe in a specific scenario, I feel like I can't speak up, or I speak up, but I'm not feeling heard, right? It can vary. And here's the key. The key is you. Right? Because only you truly know what's happening in your world. The dream is only there to speak to you, because that dream could mean something completely different from me, right? So pay attention. And we don't always remember our dreams. We're not always meant to. We're still dreaming. Our brain never shuts down. Okay, our brain is always going, but if we wake up and we have memories of a dream, that usually indicates that there's things in our 3D awake reality that we want to process, that we can use that information for. Okay, if we don't remember our dreams, it doesn't mean you're broken. Okay, it just means that all the work that your dreams are doing for you is on an unconscious level. So trust it. Trust that you're doing what you need to do. Okay? Trust the process, if you will. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is a thing called, it's actually a thing, it's called dream therapy. I didn't even know this. I was using it my whole life and never even knew it was a real thing. It was when I was, it was my first full-time job out of grad school. So I was still working on trying to acquire the hours needed for my licensure. I had my first license, which I was able to get and test for right out of grad school. But to get my independent license, I had to hit a certain amount of hours every year for 2 years before I could even test for my independent license, my clinical licensure. So it's a whole process. Every occupation has something, right? So in any case, it was my clinical supervisor, okay, who brought the whole term of dream therapy to me. And I'm like, oh my God, I literally did this with my son. So long story short, he was having a recurring nightmare. He was playing hockey at the time, and he was he was just a little kid. And he kept dreaming that Darth Vader, okay, because all the Star Wars movies were kind of coming back around and everything, and it became this really cool thing that we got to share with him. In any case, apparently Darth Vader kind of freaked him out. So he had this nightmare that Darth Vader would come after him and his teammates. And he's like, I don't know what to do. Right? And it was recurring. It was always the same dream with the same things happening at the same time. And it wasn't a memory. So a lot of times people with trauma will have the memory recur in their dream. And you can still use dream therapy with that, but as long as it's in, as long as it works with whatever therapy you're doing. Okay. So that aside, in this case, it was just a dream where he was kind of freaked out by Darth Vader and somehow brought it into his hockey team, probably because that's where he felt the most empowered. That's where he identified the most, and therefore his brain, that was his brain's way of kind of fighting back, if you will. So we did a little dream therapy, which I didn't realize. I said, okay, so when we get to this point where Darth Vader pops up, right? let's talk about a different outcome, a different scenario, right? You and I, let's talk about it. What would make that feel better, right? And he was saying how, oh, well, I could have a lightsaber and I didn't realize. And then maybe we get our ice skates and Darth Vader doesn't know how to ice skate. And he starts trying to chase us around, but he keeps falling and we're able to beat him, and then we feel really good and we win the trophy and we skate off the ice and he's still stuck there feeling sorry for himself. It was cute, right? Something along those lines, right? This was a long time ago because he's now legal. He's a legal adult now. My baby. Anyway, in any case, so I said, all right, let's write that down. Let's write it down. And the whole reason to write it down was to really kind of put it into the rote memory, right? We wanted to not only talk about it, but then we wanted to kind of create a script, right? So that we could read it and know exactly when this scenario, this new outcome would come into play. Because what happens is you're planting a seed in your brain, right? So as he writes it out, he's remembering it and he's absorbing it, right? He's really implanting. It's like imagery, right? He's really feeling how it feels, okay? So the goal with that is that as you're dreaming, if the same dream comes up, there's going to be that key point that you say, this is when, right, in your scenario, that you're going to then have a choice. And it's a little bit of lucid dreaming in a sense, because at that moment, your brain is going to kind of kick in, whether you're lucidly dreaming or not, whether you're aware that you're dreaming. All of a sudden, you're going to have like A or B. And B maybe sounds really cool now because I just did it out. And now you're going to have a new outcome to your dream. I never asked him if it ever came up. It was like 6 months later, he said to me one time, I got him off the bus and we were driving around to the house and he goes, hey, Mom. He was in the back seat in his car seat and everything. And he's like, hey, Mom, you know, that thing you told me really worked. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because, you know, life happens. And he told me, he said, I had that dream again. And I was like, really? What happened? And he said, it was like I got to that spot and all of a sudden it just started playing out the way we talked about. And it was so funny and I felt so good and everything else. And I'm like, well, have you dreamt it again? And he's like, no, I haven't had the dream anymore. So he basically took back his power. Okay. So that's something that may be helpful to somebody out there. If you're ever having a recurring nightmare, it is important to kind of sit with the why. I mean, obviously, you're not going to ask a 7-year-old to do that, right? I suppose you could, but it's going to play out a lot differently. But as an adult, if you're having a recurring nightmare, right, sit with it. You know better than anyone else as to the why, okay? And sit with the emotion and everything else, journal it out, do what you got to do. But if it keeps recurring, set up a different outcome. Do what I said, write it down, do the whole process, because that's how you're kind of feeding it into your brain, where your brain won't forget. You may, but your brain won't, because our brains, like I said, never forget anything. So anyway, that was just kind of a cool topic. I figured I'd talk about a little bit. Again, like any other topic, I could talk for hours, but 19 minutes is long enough to talk about dreams. So if you have any questions or you have any specific whatever, if I can help you, I will, because I like to talk. So anyway, wishing you the best. If you made it this far, please like, subscribe if you haven't. And hopefully we'll talk soon. Again, if there's any specifics, throw it in the comments. I do read my comments and appreciate any one of you who actually watch my videos and comment on occasion. I like to interact. So have a good one, and I'll talk again soon. Bye.